But if we're looking this winter, this spring to make a move, rates only will drop dramatically if we have huge recession concerns, if we have huge.
If you're not getting educated about local and national real estate market conditions, policy changes, and the direction of the economy, you're doing yourself and your client base a disservice. This is the Knowledge Brokers Podcast. I'm Tom Toole, here with Byron Lazine, safe and sound. Glad you're on the pod, Byron. No Lisa this week. She's vacationing on the West Coast. Must be nice.
I think it was a work vacation, but
I think I heard it was a surprise birthday party for some people we know, is what I heard. But
okay.
we'll see. So she'll be back, hopefully. Well, she'll be back next week because we're going to be at BAM Mania, Byron. Very exciting.
Yes.
That'll be happening on Friday of next week. And are you still selling tickets? What's going on with that?
You can go to bammania.com to get the final few tickets.
Love it. It's going to be a kick-ass event. First event I've gone to in 2025, so you want to be there for that. Byron, we got a jam-packed show here. We got CPI data. We're going to hit on that first. We're going to talk about Zillow's consumer housing trends report. And if you're a knowledge broker, I'd be paying attention to what consumers actually want, because agents have a tendency to focus on what they think is going to be important rather than what the data says. And then we've got this debate going on with my home MLS, Bright, and Robert Reffkin about clear cooperation. And I've got an interesting experience I just had we're going to share at the end. So, Byron, CPI data just came in. It came in flat for the month, while a lot of the Dow Jones economists that get surveyed were hoping that they were going to see like 0.1% gain. It came in flat. It's up 1.8% from a year ago. That sounds like it's less than 2% with the Fed target. I think we might have actually hit it here. And, seeing this data, I think it's, you're seeing like there's all the different components, right? Like food and energy rose 0.2%. Markets showed very little reaction to the data so far. I think this reinforces the Fed's decision to make that 50 basis point cut. What's your reaction to the CPI data here? I see this as a positive for the economy.
Yeah, the 1.8% that you're looking at, I'm seeing 2.4% year over year, just to be clear.
I'm looking at the producer price index. I'm sorry.
Okay, so PPI came out this morning.
Yes.
And so what's interesting is, CPI's been the headline here the last couple of days. We record these Friday, 10 a.m. PPI came out this morning, and you're right. That one is actually even better news than the CPI was. Wholesale prices, they were flat in September, and that was below expectations. Where the CPI, while it's still on a downward trend, CPI downward trend on 12 months was higher than expectations in both the annual. They were expecting 2.3 versus 2.4, and they were expecting a 0.1 increase month over month. Instead, they got a 0.2. The 0.2, though, on CPI is flat month over month. But all right, we're getting a little technical.
My mistake on that. Overall, I still see this as good news, by the way.
No. Overall, it's all good news for Jerome Powell landing the plane softly. It's good news for getting inflation down to 2% so that the Fed can't point towards inflation could potentially run away. And there's an argument there. Hey, if we're at 2%, why aren't we cutting? Why aren't we cutting more? Why aren't we cutting faster? Obviously, coming off the heels of already, to some, a shocking 0.5-point cut. Biggest news for me was shelter annual inflation fell. It fell to 4.9%, so still well over the overall inflation trend. But it did fall. And Jerome Powell did say it's going to take some time for shelter inflation numbers to show up in the data. So has that time now come where you're going to start to see month over month, a receding in this shelter inflation? We know that real-time data, if you look every single month, rental prices are either in the negatives or flat, that they have depreciated significantly. Now, doesn't mean rental prices have come down from pre-pandemic levels. They shot up, and now it's where it is. And in some cases, it's even ticked down a little bit. But for a year now, we've seen deceleration in appreciation, particularly in the rental market. So shelter now finally showing up on that data is finally showing up a little bit there. What happened though since then is you also had a unemployment number that came, or a
Mhm.
unemployment number that came in this week a little bit higher, highest since August 2023. And so we had that really strong jobs report last week. Now we have an unemployment number that is just 1 week of data. It's the highest mark of since 2023 and a weekly number since August of 23. How much is that going to maybe scare the Fed into saying, "Wait a minute, what's going on there?" Um, the inflation coming down on its own would be an argument for maybe staying at the current rate cut. Hey, this is working. Inflation is moving in the direction. The unemployment would shift it back towards, hey, we need a rate cut because you don't want unemployment. There's just a lot going on with this, and ultimately, I think it's good news, but it's not good news for mortgage rates. So let's be clear on that. The 10-year is at 4.1 right now at time of recording. The 30-year all week has been over 6.5, 6.6 is where it's been basically hovering around the last few days. And so you really need job data to weaken, which we didn't have last week, which shot up the 30-year for that 30-year to come down. We know that when we get into the fives, there's going to be more flexibility in the market. There's going to be more movement transaction wise. And we're nowhere close to that right now. And these data points on both CPI and PPI, as well as overall what's happened in the last 7 days with job, don't support a 30-year fix going into the fives in the near future.
I agree with you. And you look at a lot of these predictions. I sent the chart last week. We can forward it out again that like Moody's, Mortgage Bankers Association, Wells Fargo, they're not predicting that. They're predicting like maybe like 6.25 by the end of the year. I know Wells Fargo just redid their forecast. Don't hold out for fives. We've talked about this. And, one of the objections we've been practicing, Byron, I know you're doing a lot of role play with your team. We're doing the same, is that people are a little nervous now that rates kind of jumped up because it was that brief period where they were hitting six. And you've got to talk about the long term here, like asking questions like if someone says, I want to wait, I want to see what happens with the election or the economy. Hey, tell me a little bit more about that. What are you waiting for? How certain are you that the market's going to get better or worse based on what they're saying? And there's an opportunity now. I'm a big believer to really stack up. We talked about this in our text string that we have with Lisa, our accountability string. You can have a really monster 2025 right now for knowledge brokers that are out there, but you've got to have all these conversations early and then
Yeah.
just keep talking, because we're looking right now. I always like looking at the CME group. Like they have an 85.9% chance there's going to be a federal funds cut of 25 basis points at the next meeting, 14.1 that there's no cut. I'd imagine there's probably going to be a cut. I think that's probably safe to say based on the future pacing here, depending on the jobs data, obviously. I think a lot of that's priced in the rates, and we're going to be seeing these rates throughout the rest of the year. But the flip side is buyers may be able to get the home that they want. And one of the things we were talking about on the hot sheet this week is get them to focus on the motivation, right? Like people are always going to be uncertain, but ask a question like, hey, so what's important to you about buying a home like this? What's important to you about making a move? And see where their head's at, because that's what's really going to make these people transact, whether it's now or 2 years from now or whatever. And you want to be in the position to be their agent of choice. And we're going to talk about how to do that with that consumer report from Zillow here in a little bit. I'm a big believer that don't let these conditions scare you. Just keep executing on your plan and starting conversations on a regular basis.
Yeah, and know where we've come on the 30-year fix. You have 10 days left to say that the 52-week high on the 30-year fixed is over 8%. I think it was October 19th of 2023. So again, you've got about, a week and a half left of using that, and then you're going to have to revert to, hey, we've come a long way since last October when we were at 8%. But you want to remind anyone who's interest rate sensitive where we've come. And even sitting up over 6.5 right now, it's a long way from 8%. There's a piece in HousingWire that you had sent over before the show from Jeff Andrews, wrote the piece.
Mm-hmm.
And middle of the story, he says, despite inflation inching towards Fed's 2% inflation target, which is what we're seeing here with CPI data this week, now PPI coming in even better than expected, Despite the inflation engine towards Fed's 2% target, the CPI report sends a slightly mixed signal
Yes.
relative to the jobs report last week, which added 254,000 non-farm payroll jobs in September. That number is higher than the monthly average 203,000 added jobs over the last 12 months. Wage growth also accelerated to 4% in September, meaning slightly mixed, because if the job numbers are strong on what we're adding for jobs and wage growth, that would normally support inflation maybe going the opposite direction than desired. And we're seeing inflation come down to the desired target of 2% while we're seeing a strong job market, or the job market is just not as strong as what they're saying, because we already saw a couple months ago they revised 818,000 jobs down. And so these
Yes.
initial reports could be erroneous. That could be one of the reasons why it's slightly mixed. But either way, even if it isn't slightly mixed, those are two good things. Like an economy that is potentially still growing and inflation coming down. That's on the face what the data the last couple of weeks would suggest. It's like best world scenario. And so if you have a best world scenario, economy growing and inflation getting back under control, you can't have low rates at the same time. And that is important for consumers to understand. Like low rates coming over time, a lowering of the rate and a spread between the 10-year and the 30-year getting closer together. Absolutely. But if we're looking this winter, this spring to make a move, rates only will drop dramatically if we have huge recession concerns, if we have huge job market concerns, if we see breakage in the job market. That's what's going to lower rates considerably in the short term. And so, if that is where you're going to put your chips into that happening, and you really believe there's going to be some huge break in the labor market over this winter, early spring, then yeah, I guess you would wait. But there's just not a lot of data right now that you could firmly say that's going to happen. There's some cracks, there's some concerns, but nobody right now can say with full confidence that we're going into some type of full blown recession this winter, or some full blown, job issue over the winter. So
Yeah, Lisa Sturveson said the same thing from Bright, their chief economist, who agreed to come on the show, by the way. I'm trying to get
let's
her
get
pinned down
Lisa
here.
on.
Second largest MLS. She knows her stuff.
Could
So
we have two Lisas at the same time? How would that go?
I think we just cut Chinati. She'll be jet setting across the country anyway. We'll just find a vacant slot when she's traveling the world in her PJ that she has.
Is that what you guys
So
say when I'm not on the pod? We'll just cut Byron.
yes, I say the same thing. I'm Mr. Consistency here. So I don't go anywhere except New Jersey. So
Jeez.
no, I think it would actually be very interesting to have Lisa on, because she's got a very analytical mind. I love her economic questions with Lisa Sturveson. That being said, she said the same thing. And then I don't know if you saw this article on ResiClub. This came out a couple days ago, and the John Burns Research and Consulting Network, they pinned down what they call the magic mortgage rate, and that would truly unlock the market. And they're saying it's got to be below 5.5. It was 4, and then they have this chart here. I'll share
Yeah.
it with you.
Their
Um,
magic number is below 5.5.
and that would be what would get a lot of these sellers to unlock and say, all right, I've been thinking about it. I'm okay. Because right now, the people that are moving, it's the D's, right, Byron? Like it's divorce, default, death, diamonds, diapers. The list goes on.
Yeah, I've got a lifetime situation, and I'm making the move due to my life.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why the
And
number's so low in terms of transactions, because it's like only the people that need to do it are doing it.
yeah, I mean, we took 2 listings this week, right? One of them is downsizing. The other one is, doing something else that fits one of those boxes. I don't want to get into too much of that, but there's some economic challenges there, and that's what it is, right? So if you see this number and you look at this magic rate, what I would do as a knowledge broker is, all right, less than 5.5 ain't happening anytime soon. So you got
Not
to accept the brutal facts.
not
Right.
unless you have a huge labor market condition that is negative. Okay. You
Yes.
could get to 5.5 quickly.
You don't want that to happen.
If all of us you do what getting to 5.5 quickly is bad. It's bad for the economy, it's bad for your friends, it's bad for your community, because it means overnight, um, there's huge failures in some sector and there's mass layoffs happening and there's a huge all of a sudden shift that shifts sentiment, that shifts a lot of different things in a hurry. Not to say that that hasn't happened in the past in
We've
certain
seen it.
instances, we've seen it, but we don't have indications that that will happen. And I don't believe you want to root for that to happen. And you mentioned what Lisa's statements were. She's like, hey, if the labor conditions continue to outpace the expectations, or even you could even say stay at expectations, which is right
Mhm.
now the labor market's continuing to grow to some degree. Um, she says we could see mortgage rates increase further. So like 7% is actually like getting back close to 7% is actually maybe a stronger possibility than the magic number that ResiClub says once we get down to 5.5. They're not predicting 5.5.
No.
We'll also make sure that that's clear. They're just saying if we get to 5.5, that opens up the floodgates of activity in the market. Man, I'm putting odds on, and we're already closer, obviously, much closer to 7 than we are to 5.5. We're only,
Yes.
a quarter
Half a
to a
point.
point
Yeah.
4 points away from 7. um, you know, it's more likely we get there than we do 5.5 over the winter.
Yeah, and I think when you see that though, where I'm going with this is that you've got to ask better questions, and I tend to focus on the tactical side because yeah, there are less transactions this year, but you can still work on your business as a knowledge broker, and if you're able to understand, all right, this is what the market's doing, and when you accept the brutal facts in your industry, we talked about this earlier in the week, you and I, then you can have a plan that's going to be like a SMART goal, right? It's achievable, it's realistic, and the tactic of I got to find the people that are having these life events means you got to have more conversations. You got to talk to more folks. You got to be in touch with them because right now they have these percentages they put on this chart here. And today's average rate falls in the 13% range, which is the people that are, it's the highest mortgage rate that people would accept on their next home purchase. And right now we're at 13% of homeowners. So you get to that magic number that's 47. So we're at 13, which is about right. I mean, basically 5% of the population is thinking about a real estate decision at any given time. That doesn't mean all 13% of these people are going to go there, but you've got to get real with this data and instead of just hoping for the best. And that's a lot of, what agents that are succeeding and seeing increases in their business are doing this year. They're getting real and finding the folks that are ready to transact.
Yeah, and you can't just, wait for the market to correct itself. I do think we could see a 2 or 3 year, run up, meaning how much lower can transactions go? A run up on transactions, another little mini real estate boom, but on 25, 26, and 27. But if it's going to be a 2, 3 year run, that means 25 is going to be better than 24, 23, end of 22, but it's going to be the start of that run, not like the peak of that run. Meaning you're going to
Mhm.
start to see the trends go in your direction. So 25 will be better than 24. I do firmly believe that as, over time, the 30-year fix starts to correct itself, and hopefully the spread between the 30-year and the 10-year continues to correct itself there as
Mhm.
well.
Mhm.
But it takes, if we're going to continue to grow the economy, continue to grow labor, it takes time. It's going to move slowly. And by the time you get into closer to 26, 27, then you could be living consistently in the low fives, and that magic number really opens up a ton of transactions for everyone, really, for buyers, sellers, investors, even that 1% of institutional buyers and smaller percentage of iBuyers. It all opens up for everybody, Tom. Everybody wins.
That was a Remax book, I think. Dave Lininger wrote that. Everybody wins. I'll send you a copy.
Send
I've
me a
got it
copy.
autographed. I haven't read it yet, to be very honest with you.
Dust it off and send it to
Yeah,
me.
I'll find it's probably a coffee mug sitting on top of it. So, with that, Byron, I think we hit on a lot of good stuff there economically. What I want to talk about is more the tactical side because we are in the fourth quarter here, and Zillow comes out with this report every year, and these reports are all over the place. It's their 2025 Consumer Housing Trends Report for agents, and I don't know about you. What I've seen is that most agents, when they're talking to consumers, they tend to focus on the story in their head than what the actual data tells them. A great example is when people meet with sellers. They're always worried about price and compensation rates and what they're going to get paid. What the excuse me, what the seller cares about is timing the move, making sure the sale is going to go through, and getting to the next property. And when you focus on those things, you're going to attract more business. So this report, it's 40 pages long. There was a couple key takeaways I had. I want to fire off one or two of them here, see what you think. So the first one that jumped out at me is that consumers, when it comes to representation, 59% of sellers and 47% of buyers ultimately hired the first agent they contacted. And that could be a sign that people are working with agents they've worked with previously.
It's a sign that people value their time.
Well, that as well. I agree with that. And it probably just tells me, get in front of more people. Just
Of
try to meet
course.
with them, even if they're like 6 months out or 12 months out. Who cares?
Listen, people value their time so much. What this stat tells me.
That's a great point. This is a great
People
point.
value their time so much that they might take a B player, a C plus player agent, because that's the first meeting they took and they just want to make this decision and move on, as opposed to maybe somebody who's more analytical, who's going to interview 2 or 3 plus agents. Most people aren't that analytical or aren't that detail oriented. And so the first person that gets in front of them has an overwhelming chance of winning, just because that person is busy, values their time, wants to get on with it. And so by not making sure you're first, you might end up being last. Isn't that a book too? If you're not first, you're last.
I think that's a Kenny Powers comment from
That's a-
Eastbound and Down. If you're not first, you're last, kid, which is something I say to my kids all the time. So I love it, Byron.
But right, so yeah, that not making those connections, not being aggressive on how much you're going to engage on your database and on leads and on follow-up, et cetera, is going to impact your business significantly. And you might end up talking to somebody like, oh man, had I met you, I would have loved to have hired you. But, met somebody else who was just more aggressive in getting the meeting booked, getting the appointment. The whole purpose of a call with somebody that you haven't met, whether coming inbound as a buyer, investor, seller, or you're an outbound reach, whatever the case may be, is to get face to face with them. What's interesting too about this report, Tom, is that, and Zillow made a big point of this when we met last week at the Unlock the State of the Union, is that 53% of people prefer text messaging, 33% phone call, 13% email. So written communication, they bundled as like 67%. That's not an excuse to only text people. If you don't get face to face, you're not going to fall on that 67% that's able to text. You need rapport for text to be effective. And so that's phone call into face-to-face meeting. That is still going to be the pathway to getting the permission now to be able to use text message. And really, are you going to articulate extreme value if you're only communicating over text? And listen, I think buyers prefer to communicate via text per Zillow. It's buyers who worked with an agent preferred to text. So that means they have a working relationship. Doesn't mean they're in that, dating phase where you've got to get in front of them. Okay. So once you get in front of them, have the rapport, yeah, they're moving fast. They want to communicate about things often via text. But to get a chance to be the first person to meet, you got to meet.
Yeah. There was a couple things I want to hit on there, Byron. I want to unpack. There's really 6 channels for you to get in front of clients, right? There's, texting, right? There's voice to voice, so phone calls, face to face, obviously, really important. Social media, their email inbox, and direct mail. Those are the 6 different channels, right? And texting, yeah, they want to text. You know when they want to text you? After they've met you, they've talked to you on the phone, they hear the sound of your voice, and then you build that relationship. Because I remember vividly, I was backstage at the Tom Ferry Summit with Phil Jones and Tim Smith, right? Tim Smith's working on like some $40 million deal. And he's like, I think I lost it. This is what he says. And I'm
He's
getting ready to go
always
on
on
stage.
his phone, by the way.
Yeah,
Like
always
actual
look,
phone call, not
yes,
Snapchatting.
for sure. Yeah. So, and he says to everybody, and we're back there, he's like, I think I might have lost the deal. And, putting any deal together is hard. Forget the price point. Get that out of your head. Deals are tough to put together. And Phil goes, let me see your phone. What did you send these people? And he goes, that's a horrible text. Write this. And then jump on a call with them. That was the advice that he had. So they used some magic words. They sprinkled it in. And I think the end was like, when would be a good time to chat about this? It's a big decision. We should really talk through it and have a conversation. And then all of a sudden, he was able to put it back together. And I think that's a great example of texting is a great way to communicate about certain things like, hey, documents are in your inbox, Byron, or I'll see you at 3 today. I just got the appointment confirmed. But when these big decisions come up, I'm still a big believer people need to hear the sound of your voice. And that goes a long way because you can't, you've also, as an agent, you've got to gauge the situation. A text does not translate tonality, pauses, body language. There's so many different things there. So don't use this report as an excuse, to your point, of just texting people all the time. The phone
Yeah.
calls are going to help you, and the meetings obviously are important too.
And the first person that meets has an overwhelming likelihood of getting the deal. And listen, most people want your services. One of the key takeaways of this
Mm-hmm.
was that 93% of sellers work with an agent and 85% of buyers. So nearly all buyers and
Mm-hmm.
sellers work with agents. 85% of buyers, 93% of sellers. I have a theory on why 85% of buyers is lower than the 93% of sellers. Um,
What's the theory?
so I think the theory is that there's more of a likelihood for buyers to, get some type of an off-market situation. Hey, a family member, where they're buying a house out from family. You see that all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then also unrepresented. Okay,
Mm.
so they don't have representation. They're actually using the conduit for the seller, which is their agent, um, to submit the paperwork. So the person that's representing the seller's best interest, the seller agent, they think they're getting a
Mm-hmm.
deal by going to that. I think
That
those
that is that
two,
is a common misconception. I agree with you.
yeah, I think those two are the reasons why. What else stood out to you though?
There was one thing that stood out to me at the end, and it was, where was it here? That a lot of people think compensation is fair. I mean, that was a big takeaway here. I got to find the actual data on this, where they talked about, I think it was 70+%. This is a long report. Hold on. That Where was it here? 70 where was it? I'll find, and it was like 70+% thought commission and compensation was fair. And I thought that was pretty interesting because that means they're actually getting some value, and it's a lot different than what the picture that was painted by your buddy Catchmark and everyone else. So I
Yeah,
thought that was
I'm gonna
pretty fascinating there.
I'm gonna golf with him this weekend down in
Are you kidding me?
Catch. Yeah, yeah. He just bought a $20 million pad in Naples. We're gonna, which would make him the little guy on the block over there in Port Royal. But no, I'm not gonna golf with him. What do you even say? You're looking
That
at
was
me
like,
like I'm serious.
you shocked me there, and this is I'm like, man, if he's golfing with him, I'm flying down. Like, I'm coming. Like, let's go. I don't even golf. I would just show up. I'd drive the cart for you guys. I'd be your chauffeur.
Uh,
So, I mean, what I see this report, I think there's stuff you can pull out of this. Use it to adjust your approach, Byron, is my point. I think you want to realize what people want, and it's nothing new, right? How many times have we heard the lead indicator for the most successful agent is the person that meets the most people?
yeah, always.
Always. But you got to know how to deliver the appointment. That's why you got to practice this stuff. So, last thing we got here, got a little fight brewing here between my local MLS and Robert Reffkin.
Maybe you can be the
The
guest referee if they get in the
I,
ring.
I'll be like, who was that guy that used to do all the Tyson fights? He was the bald dude. You know what I'm talking about? I can't think of it.
Oh yes. Somebody's got to put it in the comments. I'm not gonna be able to get it unless Haley wants to pull it up.
Yeah, I know it was. He had like he was great. Mills Lane. There we go.
Mills Lane.
How about
I
that?
was actually at a WWE match when Mike Tyson was the guest referee after his
Hmm.
boxing career, a WrestleMania match at I think that was Madison Square Garden.
Sounds pretty awesome.
Oh, it was incredible.
That's
Absolutely
fantastic.
incredible.
All right, so Robert Reffkin, he's had multiple op-eds on Inman at this point, being clear that he does not support clear cooperation, and he's made a couple points that apparently the Bright CEO, Brian Donnellan, feels that are inaccurate. So tell me what you think about this, Byron. First point, agents lose choice how to market sellers' property by being forced to adhere to conditions to access the MLS. Bright says this statement is incorrect. Bright's rules don't have restrictions he's referring to. We are crystal clear as to the options Agents have to market a property at the seller's instruction. Should they wish to market a property as an office exclusive, that's their choice. Or they can market it within the MLS system and not on the internet. Or they can market it through the MLS with only a single photo. It's up to them. There's nothing about access to the MLS that's inconsistent with their plan to market a property. What do you think about that?
Yeah, Revkin's quote in his op-ed at the top of that piece was, "I support a common sense approach where sellers have a choice of where, when, and how to advertise their home for sale." Common sense approach. I mean, he that is spoken like a true free market capitalist by Robert Reffkin, which I absolutely would, you know, I support free market, I support
Mhm.
capitalism, all of that. Okay.
Same here.
Um, Now, that being said, this is a very delicate topic. You have Zillow, who is 100% supportive of clear cooperation policy. Um, they believe in it strongly. Fair and equal opportunity to all listings for all consumers to be able to find it all in one place. Like if it's one of the arguments on clear cooperation is like, think about if everything went away, MLSs went away and really the portals went away. Think if Zillow went away and you had to go to like Remax website,
Mhm.
Compass website, Berkshire Hathaway website, Coldwell website, all the different, to find all that, you had to just keep bouncing. That would be impossible
Pain in the
for
butt.
a consumer to be able to do that. Like if you didn't have these shared IDX feeds where all listings are on all the websites. And so that's when they talk about equal access to all of the listings for all buyers. And then, part of what Revkin is saying, where if a seller wants to choose a certain path, why should they also be restricted? So, like, both sides do have great points.
Mhm.
My belief is certainly that 99, really 0.9% of the time, putting your home on the MLS as a seller is by far the best strategy for selling and listing your home. There is some sellers that no matter what are going to want to try a different approach. I know privacy comes up as the biggest reason for that. There are just other
Mhm.
reasons, quite frankly, racking up days on market and all of that. Now, there is an opportunity to sign a form right now, I think in every MLS, and keep it off of the MLS.
Mhm.
That though makes it an office exclusive. It doesn't give that agent the ability to market it on Facebook or on all these different
Or
places
to other agents. I mean, I
or to
think
other agents outside the
that's where
office.
this statement is wrong. I don't like that statement for that reason.
Which statement?
What Bright said, this is incorrect. Bright's rules don't have restrictions. Yes, they do. I mean,
Yeah, they do.
I got called and reported for this, by the way. So this happened to us about a week ago where we had an office exclusive signed. The seller's prepping their home, right? So and this is pretty common, Byron, where it takes like a couple weeks to get the place ready, even if it's in good shape. So we're in the process of doing that. They're moving to their new house, and we get this email from Bright, and it says, "Hey, we've been notified. There's an active listing agreement. You're in non-compliance. Blah blah blah." And we haven't even done anything. Like we have all our files locked. We got all the paperwork right. So then I called Bright and I said, "Okay, well, what do we need to do here to make this compliant?" Then they give me one piece of advice. And they say, "Actually, we're not sure about this. I'm going to have to get back to you." And that was over a week ago. And then our broker called Bright and they gave us other instructions. And apparently we have outdated forms from Bright now. There's new forms we've never seen before. So I don't know that the MLSs actually know what they're doing here. They're coming up with these rules, but there are restrictions, and it's like $1,000 fine. And
Uh,
it's either because the seller talked to somebody at the pool in his community and told him the house is coming up for sale, or the other agent they interviewed was pissed off they didn't get the listing.
yeah, I mean, a seller gets very frustrated when it's like, um, you're telling them there's only certain ways they can sell their house if they want to utilize the service of a real estate professional. It's their house, right? And so they get
Yes.
really prickly about that, and I absolutely understand that. I think ultimately, clear cooperation, the argument is strong for having a market where a consumer can get access to all or majority of listings available. That is a strong argument, and we
Mhm.
all agree that that's, in most cases, the best way for this to work. Now, I just think the solution here is meeting in the middle on the form that does exist where sellers can opt out of the MLS. But really, if you're going to follow clear cooperation, really that becomes an office exclusive. There's not really much marketing that there's no marketing that that agent can do if that seller signs that form. I think a stronger disclosure form where an agent could be clear with that form that says, I'm advising you to go on the MLS. You're telling me you want this other strategy. You have to sign this form, but that opens up other marketing opportunities available to the seller if they choose not to go on MLS. And probably the trade-off there, Tom, is going to be that it can't be office exclusive.
Mhm.
So it's really to at that point, it's becoming you get a little bit more privacy and you don't have the days on market thing. Now the industry is really I think there's somewhere in the middle that everybody can meet on this, but they're
I
really
agree.
taking their positions. There are brokers and leaders in this industry that just don't like Robert Reffkin, and they're going to be adamantly against his position, and they think he's doing this out of just what can be a short-term win for his company Compass. And of course, I mean, he has a by the way, he has a fiduciary responsibility to his shareholders
Yes.
to do what's in the best interest of Compass. So regardless you like the guy or not, his fiduciary responsibility is to Compass shareholders, and I think that he's probably going to continue to act in the best interest
Well,
of that.
that's what he should do. I mean, that's his
Yeah,
job.
the where I have a problem is where people, brokers are like, um, this has to be a cooperative solution, but they were so quick to give up on cooperating compensation. I think that to me it just sounds like an oxymoron. Maybe because the branding on these names are so bad. Cooperation in both names, but we were so quick to lay down on cooperating on compensation. It seems like that every day. I mean, you continue today to have um, a lot of strong voices in the industry say co-broke compensation is, while it's not dead, it's in the settlement, is going away within 6 months, and
Yep.
you have to give it up. You give it up now or else. But why the hell is it in the settlement then? And why are you demeaning the brokers that have chosen that? They say, hey, you're all going to get sued. And I get that. Maybe those brokers, though, are getting different advice from their attorneys. But, some brokers that were so willing to give up that cooperation, due to what they're being advised by their attorneys, demand cooperation on this side. And it's a shame that there's this much infighting. It's not a shame though that there's debate
I
going
like the
on in the
debate.
industry. I like debate. I think a lot of things are ultimately going to end up changing and be better for consumers. I do think decoupling commissions has ultimately been better for consumers because these conversations are happening earlier on in the process than ever before. Um, Even though cooperative compensation is still happening at scale, the compensation conversation is happening much earlier. And I think there's a middle ground on clear cooperation. Sellers should have a little bit more wiggle room. They should have to sign and really initial out every step that they understand what they're asking their listing agent to do. But listing agents shouldn't be restricted from working with sellers. The small percent of sellers who want to go down that path, it's going to be such a small number. It's not like all of a sudden 50% of sellers. I heard some stat recently. Oh, well, when this was going on, like 30% of homes listed in Silicon Valley. I forget where I heard this. 30% of homes in Silicon Valley were off market. Yeah, because it's Silicon Valley. That isn't Ohio. That
Yeah.
isn't Florida. That isn't Texas. That isn't Connecticut. That's not Pennsylvania. That's not Illinois. Silicon Valley is one of one. Yeah, of course you're going to have a whole bunch of um, people in Silicon Valley that want to go that. You're not going to see that on your median price home. Don't compare Silicon Valley
Yeah.
to America. Come on.
I think affluent neighborhoods, that happens all the time. I think, it's at some of the higher price points, but
Yeah.
that's like 3-4% of the market. And I think that's where,
I mean,
you see
Silicon
like
Valley is not a comparable market to anywhere in America.
anywhere. Yeah, I agree with you. And, I do like the debate, and I do like the middle ground here for sure. And, really you hit the nail on the head, Byron. It's the seller's home. The seller should have options, because the people do get frustrated when you have to tell them. And I'm like, hey, I don't need to get this fine
We're in the
and everything else.
minority on that, in the sense that that a lot of people would just say, like, Zillow is very adamant, like you
Oh, of
should
course they
support
are.
clear cooperation. I mean, of course, they want all the listings on Zillow, and Realtor.com would be no different in that respect. And I actually don't know how Homes feels about it, but I'm sure they want all the listings on their portal. Okay. Um, that being said, I'm not saying that clear cooperation should just completely be dismantled. I am saying what you're saying is that sellers should have more say. It should be clearly defined what they're doing in writing. Because yeah, they're going to get the numbers are obvious. You make more money when you're on the MLS. Okay. Um,
There's studies about this. It's like 13 to 17% more in
it,
Bright, and that's a regional MLS. It's not one area.
it's obvious you're going to make more money on the MLS. And so the argument is then you're doing the sellers a disservice. Well, sometimes I've sat in front of sellers where it's like, I don't need to make the most money possible. I need to do it my way. Now you're touching a little bit of depending on what their way is. If they want to sell it to a certain like you could get into some fair housing stuff as an agent, you have to walk away from. So if they start going into fair housing where it's like, I want to sell it to this or that or whatever, that is no.
It happens. Yeah, you
That's a
can't do it. But
non-starter. Okay.
that will come out of people's mouths. Be ready for that.
There are some sellers, even if you show them that number, and you should show them that number. Hey, you're going to make more money on the MLS. To say, I think I can make more money off the MLS. You just got some guys that won't listen. Okay. And so what are you going to, you have to walk away from those listings that they should have some freedom there. I still think we're talking about such a minority. And the MLSs are clearly, obviously going to be in support of clear cooperation. And by the way, clear cooperation, if if it's adjusted, I don't think it's a perfect rule, but if it's adjusted to be a little bit better, probably does benefit us, Tom.
Yeah.
It's just I think what Revkin is saying, and people are going to hate him for saying it, probably hate us a little bit for saying it. Like, I do think, yeah, there should be freedom when you own an asset, to be able to sell it how you want. I also think that's true. So there's got to be a middle ground here.
Yeah, and it comes with a disclosure form. It comes with all the options. Like, one option should be, hey, I don't want an office exclusive. I want my agent to be able to market this, and I'm going to tell them exactly what to do. And that makes things a lot easier. And you're right, we are in the minority on this for whatever reason. I mean, I don't know why. I'm a big component of common sense too, Byron. So this is going to keep going on. I mean, the reality is the DOJ did target clear cooperation, so maybe that's. But like, it's so funny because people that, like you said,
Well,
they got away from the co-broke, and now they're worried about this. And it's like, well, what are you actually worried about with the DOJ? Like, you can't just pick and choose. I like people that have a position that makes sense.
yeah. Yeah. I think we'll see what happens. I think the DOJ will be interesting to see what they comment on this. Because
NAR is going to the Supreme Court, my friend. So, I mean,
Yeah.
they wrote the petition today. BAM did a nice article about this where they wrote a writ of certiorari with the U.S. Supreme Court challenging the DOJ's attempt to reopen the closed antitrust investigation. We talked about it before the show. It looks like it's going to the Supreme Court. I mean, it's going to be interesting.
NAR's petition is the government must honor its contractual obligations. No legal precedent allows government body to reopen closed investigations. The previous court's decision is exceptionally wrong and important, talking about the U.S. Court of Appeals decision in the DOJ's favor. So we'll see if the Supreme Court agrees with NAR. Remember, the DOJ did agree to this settlement that they pulled out of during the Trump administration. You have a lot of Trump appointees in the Supreme Court. Then the DOJ sought to reopen the investigation after President Biden was became the president. His administration took over. So maybe NAR will have a better luck with the Supreme Court. Just based on that. I don't know that that's everything. But listen, it's hard to predict what the courts
I agree
are
with
going to
that.
do these days. We've seen some wild lawfare throughout the last 12 months, or we've seen the courts used in a variety of different ways. I don't think in our own industry we could have imagined the amount of lawsuits. And so
Even with some of
which
the testimonies in Sitzer Burnett, like the people that the clients are going up there saying it's like, hey, I thought this was fair. I got the right service, and they lost anyway. So it's like, I don't know.
yeah,
You're absolutely right.
if the Supreme Court decides to review DOJ's renewed antitrust investigation, if they decide to review, which way they will go is super unclear. NAR needs to push this to the Supreme Court, by the way, because the settlement that they did agree to with DOJ is very much in line with the settlement that is in place right now, which actually would protect, by the way, cooperative compensation. If you got the DOJ to sign off on this settlement, you might not hear cooperative compensation is going away, because the argument that is definitely going away and going to be, one of the adjustments on the current settlement, which doesn't actually get finalized till November 26th, is that the
Yes.
DOJ is going to come in here and pound that out of the settlement. Well, if you got a Supreme Court say, DOJ, you got to you've got to respect or renew your original settlement because it reflects the one here, with the plaintiffs, then you actually might see that go away. So I do think NAR needs to bring this as far as it can. They don't have many more rabbits up their sleeves, so this could be one of them.
Might be it.
Do rabbits go up a sleeve? Was that a right phrasing?
Cards up your sleeve.
Cards up the sleeve. Where's the rabbit go? In the hat?
Comes out of a hat. Yes.
All right. Cards up your sleeve. Rabbits up your
It's
sleeve.
interesting.
Imagine a rabbit in your sleeve, Tom.
I've had animals can get in your shirt, but it's usually like a bug or something. It's never like a rabbit. That's a large animal. I mean, you got to have a big sleeve too. I don't know how the thing's even fitting up here.
You get the slim fit.
Yeah. Well, fortunately I do. I remember, I don't know if you remember when there was this movie that came out. This might be a good place to leave it. It was about the election back in 2004, where they challenged it and took it to the Supreme Court. And there's a scene where the two lawyers are going there and they say, well, I guess this is it. We're going to figure this out one way or the other. And that's probably where this is going with NAR. Like, this is it. I think this challenge is as far as they can take this here. I think that's going to really set the stage for what happens next.
Yeah, if the Supreme Court has no interest in real estate and listening and reviewing this, NAR is going to be a little bit at the mercy of the DOJ. And I guess that's where a lot of the brokers see this going. If NAR pulls off this, do you give NAR credit for that? Is that a big win? And should agents say, hey, if they can get DOJ to respect the previous settlement by, winning this argument in front of the Supreme Court, Tom, would you think differently about NAR?
I would. I mean, look,
I would too.
This is look. I don't want to call it the Hail Mary, but this is like there's limited amount of time left in the game, and you got to put it in the end zone here.
Yeah,
this is crunch time. There's no other option for NAR to continue to be relevant. If they don't, think about what happens if they don't. I think that's probably the more interesting thing. But I want them to win. I would be giving Kevin Sears and the leadership team over there a lot of credit. I mean, if they're able to do this, and I think that's a big win for real estate agents.
This would be like a late season divisional game Who's going to like this would be a big win. This isn't winning a championship, but this would be an enormous win for NAR. I think it would regain some trust that's been broken, and some support might come back with a win like this. If they can pull it off, I do think it'd be substantial.
The one thing they have working on their side, Byron, and you've talked about this before, is that if they can kick the can down the road 4 months till a decision.
Right.
And I say that because, I mean, you look at history, right? History tells us what happens. And they had an agreement in place in 2019. Then somebody else got elected, and then they went back in after the new president came into play. I mean, that's, it's you got to look at that. I think you have to be realistic there. And NAR, I mean, it's not going to, I don't think anything gets resolved with this between now and the end of the year. I'd be shocked if it did. So that could be the saving grace here if the Supreme Court doesn't weigh in and it goes back to the DOJ.
Should NAR endorse either presidential candidate?
I mean, they usually, I've gotten like mailers before of like the candidates they endorse
more
locally.
local stuff though, right?
Yeah,
like
I mean, it's like, or even like a state senator or a U.S. senator. I've gotten those.
Yeah,
I've never seen a presidential, and it's tough because I think
I
they
think
have these housing plans. I think they're probably going to stay away
I
from
think
that
they'll
one.
probably stay away in a 50-50
That would be my advice, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
how much can we get for a consulting fee from them? They got all this money they're throwing around for that marketing budget. Can they take
I
our
don't know.
political advice here?
We'll take Nakia Wright joining the pod. That would be good enough.
We'll see. All right, Byron, you got a hard stop here.
Yep. Awesome.
Next week, we're live, ladies and fellas, at BAM Mania. Last tickets are available at bammania.com. If you like what we talked about today, do us a favor. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications, drop a review, a comment, whatever you can do, and we'll keep the knowledge flowing.
We'll see you in Vegas next week. We know that in 2024, your business operations will be more important than ever. Once I figured this out, my business was able to scale and take off. See, generating leads is one thing, but getting that deal across the finish line while keeping everyone happy is another story. Enter Mosaic, everything you need once a lead becomes a client. Mosaic picks up where CRMs leave off to streamline the client experience and maximize your productivity. It's the operating platform that gives agents and teams everything they need to stay organized and proactive throughout the entire transaction process and beyond. Transaction management, forms, AI-powered collaborative search, client retention capabilities, and advanced analytics for your business. In other words, you can use Mosaic to create a powerful flywheel for your business. It will help you close every deal, boost your profitability, and generate more repeat and referral business. If you need a better way to run your business, check out the link below and learn how Mosaic can help you today. At BAMX, we listen to what real estate professionals want and need. That's why our platform is filled with sought-after courses, content, and tactical assets for your business. And that's why we launched BAMX in a box with templates and scripts done for you, delivered each Friday. The best part? It's not coming from panel pontificators who bought their followers and don't sell any real estate. It's coming from top agents, team leaders, and content creators in the industry. It's education that actually shows you how to do what you need in today's market. And now it includes editable templates and scripts so you can easily deliver that knowledge to your database. Every day, we continue to add more content into BAMX, into our private Facebook community, content that works, content that our members have exclusive access to daily. Do not wait any longer. Use code Knowledge Brokers and join the thousands of agents taking their business to the next level today. Use Knowledge Brokers for 10% off. See you in BAMX.